Hello, everybody. My name's Rick McCutcheon. I'm a Dynamics 365 MVP, and welcome to the BluJay NMB Solutions Dynamics 365 Shipping and Transportation Forum. This is our third session, and I think it's going to be a good one as we've got some very interesting guests today. They're partners of BluJay and NMB, so we should get some interesting conversations. So partnering with the right ISV add-ons really bring a lot of value to a project. So today we're going to really discuss, what type of ISVs get added to a project and how the partners like to engage with the ISV partners or the SI partners with the ISV partners. So I think it's going to be a pretty good conversation. So let's get started. We'll have each panelist introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about what they do. Can we start with you, Bob?
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Bob Berry. I'm with Avanade. I'm a group manager for North America manufacturing and supply chain solution architecture. My responsibility is basically to look at the pre-sale situations and sit with the customer, find out what they need, and then build the solution around that, build the resource allocation estimate and SOW.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Jeremy, over to you.
Yes, hi, welcome everybody. My name is Jeremy Salome, and I work for Sunrise Technologies. And my role there is I am our Senior Solutions Director, which for Sunrise is our strategy group, similar to, as Bob was describing, helping customers form their overall scope, which includes the potential Dynamics 365 ISV or add-on solutions, and planning their multi-phase projects accordingly and making sure it's focused on value for that customer.
Okay, thank you. Mehmet.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Mehmet Komuk, and I'm Director of Professional Services at NMB Solutions. And I have been in the industry for more than 25 years, and last 9 years is at NMB Solutions, mostly focusing on the transportation management, trade and logistics, and supply chain solutions. And my primary role is basically doing the customer implementations and helping partners like today. We have our partners to help them achieve their goal to make the customer happy in doing ERP implementations.
Okay, thank you. And Tim.
Good afternoon. I'm Tim Conroy. I'm SVP of Sales for BluJay Americas. We're a global company providing technology solutions in the transportation space for shippers, LSPs, forwarders around the globe. So we're happy to be here today in support of all our partners.
Okay, thank you, Tim. So we'll start with you, Bob. And really, can we talk a little bit about ISV relationships with an F&O project? When I was talking to one global partner recently, they said they may manage over 100 different ISV applications across their organization. So the ISV community is very, very important. So let's talk a little bit about why you engage with ISVs on an F&O project.
Sure, and that's a very good question. As good as Microsoft 365 is, the name keeps changing. It was F&O, now it's finance and supply chain. As good as it is, as with every ERP, there are going to be holes in the functionality, and those holes are typically filled by ISVs. In Avanade, what we do is we go through a pretty extensive process of vetting the ISV. So what we would do initially is talk to the customer, understand their requirements. And then where we feel that there is a gap in functionality within 365, we would go internally to our approved ISVs. Now that's a very small subset of the total that you see in the app source, which is Microsoft's total ISV ecosphere. And then we look very specific at the need, whether it's finance, CPQ, maybe there's a CAD/CAM integration that needs to be done. And in this case with BluJay and NMB, it would be transportation. And then because BluJay and NMB Solutions is part of our subset of the total ecosphere, we begin to look at them as the partner of choice to solve that transportation problem.
And when we look at the number of ISVs, I think it's a competitive advantage for Dynamics, just because it's the best of breed organizations actually building connections to Dynamics. So, if you chose another ERP from another vendor, a lot of times you're stuck using all their solution sets, which, may not be best of breed in some areas. So,
Right.
there are a lot of ISVs, but I think there's a good reason for them. But,
Yeah.
Jeremy, you want to add on to anything?
No, I just wanted to second Bob's notion. It's important for the partner network to develop tight relationships with those key ISVs in the verticals that they may go after. And so, we're talking about transportation and shipping, which has a big supply chain impact. And so, the combination of BluJay and NMBB is a common one that we see when we hear, multi-carrier sort of requirements from our customers, as Bob was mentioning before. So, we go through that scoping, identify the need, and actually tie it to the value and the processes that, in this case, BluJay and NMBB would be involved in.
And, we talked a little bit in our sort of pre-interview about this, that, there's a certain type of opportunity where this fits, where, they want to be able to access more than one supplier, right? Vendor for shipping. So talk a little bit about, that type of opportunity.
Yeah, for us at Sunrise, the sweet spot when we would call up Tim and Mehmet and get them involved is we have a customer, they're running either a manufacturing or a distribution center, and as they're going out and that value and promise that they're giving to their customers, they're looking to provide the best transportation option at the lowest cost. And so they're going to need to rate those multi-carriers out there on that specific transaction for their customer. And when we start hearing customers that have 3, 4, 5 of those carriers that they use and want to do that in, it's a no-brainer to go to someone like the BluJay solution to get that and bring all that integrated data back in for our customer to make that best transportation decision for their customer and potentially help lower costs overall.
Okay, so Bob, what would you say are the advantages of using an ISV like BluJay and MB instead of trying to custom build an application?
Well, that's yeah, and you'll have some customers ask you that question, and our basic response is we can always build it if you have a year or two to wait and have a couple $1 million that you have extra on your pocketbook. Solutions like BluJay and NMB are very, very complex. As Jeremy was saying, you're looking at multi-carrier rate changes and all of this dynamics, some of it even real time, that's going to be integrated into 365. And one of the advantages BluJay has in NMB is that they're part and parcel of the 365 solution. So the end customer doesn't really know visually where their solution stops and starts and where the 365 solution starts and stops. And that's a really big point when we look at partners for the ISV ecosphere. We are looking primarily, first case, who are the ones that are embedded in the Microsoft solution? Because the last thing that you want is a user to be in a screen looking at a Microsoft form and then having to go to another monitor or another form outside of that and say, okay, now I want to do this, and then start thinking, well, how often does that sync up? And what happens if that connection breaks? Or what happens if I don't save in Microsoft and save here? All those questions go away when you're embedded. And to add to Jeremy's point, not only is it the number of carriers and stuff, but actually a lot of complexities like denied party screening in some industries, like pharmaceutical or medical device or radiation treatment situations. Their products are blacklisted to be shipped or sent to individuals, countries, organizations. And one of the things that BluJay does very well is it brings all of these different sources of denied party databases together into one. I'm just pointing out one of the examples.
Okay, great, thanks. So I'm going to go over to Tim now because you're coming from the ISV side of things. When would you like to get engaged with a partner? And we've got a couple of fine partners here right now that you can let them know what is the right time.
Well, we like to obviously get engaged as early as possible in the cycle so that we can provide the maximum benefit as we go through. Once it's been determined that transportation and moving goods around is an important piece of the project, and it looks like it's more complex than what the base system can handle, that's where we get introduced. As Bob and Jeremy have been saying, we provide solutions that go across multiple carriers, multiple modes of transportation, things like the party screening and all that. So it's good to get engaged early so that we can scope and define what that looks like in the end project. As soon as possible, Rick, would be the answer. Yeah.
Okay, great. Mehmet, would you like to add anything to that?
Yes, as Tim mentioned, it's better to get engaged as early as possible in the project. But again, we also rely on other partners because they know their customers very well. If we get engaged at the early stages, we can also help to build the solution better for the customer, because basically the partner is responsible to deliver the final solution to their customer, and their responsibility. We try to help the gap here. So basically, if we get engaged early stages, we will have the flexibility to offer the best solution possible, and also to identify the configuration-wise to set up the system, whether to bring in additional functionality from BluJay into Microsoft world.
Okay, so Jeremy, now that you've got a customer, you see that they have a complex sort of shipping scenario, how do you start to help them with the planning?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that question, Rick. So as when we're getting in and planning the project, we are always tying the capabilities that BluJay would have into the specific processes that we're going to go and configure inside of D365. So design, configure, manage accordingly. And so as early on in the project as possible, after that requirements gathering, we would have started to facilitate that introduction between the customer, the partner team, and BluJay in this example. And so we want to do that consciously early, because there's going to be that decision point, are they going to leverage the native capability that BluJay has, or can they not for one reason or another, and it has to be deferred? Obviously we want them to take advantage of it, because it just helps facilitate that design much easier in the system. And so we'll do that, and we'll get those introduced in that first planning phase of that diagnostics, and that's actually what the solutions team at Sunrise helps facilitate. We'll get them introduced. We will tie them to the specific processes, and we will want to put a kind of decision timeline out there of, we need this decision within a certain time period to know we have that technical solution available to us to then leverage in the design. So it happens very, very early on for us. And sometimes maybe even back in that pre-sales motion as well, if something is very obvious from that customer, we'll even engage and get them involved in the upfront demonstration process. But usually that flushes out at the first phase of that project, in that scoping or diagnostics phase.
Okay, Bob, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, no, Jeremy hit the nail right on the head. The one thing I'd like to add is the offering that BluJay and NMB bring oftentimes is overlooked because we focus on the transportation side of the thing. But there's another aspect of their solution, which is, like, for example, the packing workbench. This is where they've taken the fundamental functionality of D365 and greatly enhanced it. And what we have found is that in one case, it was unfortunate that we had a change of guard, so to speak, at a customer site, and we lost track of that situation. We knew that they were, NMB and BluJay was a great transportation mod for the ISV, but we lost track of the fact that it also replaces the packing functionality of 365. And when we got back on track again, thanks to Mehmet, everything was really great and the customer loved it. So I would say, yeah, you know, to Jeremy's point, bring him in as early as possible, because one of the things we don't want to do is go down the path during the implementation project, during the design and things, and forget that there is functionality that is added to not only the transportation side, but also to the warehousing side, for example.
And maybe this might be a good place in the conversation to really, you know, give the listener a clear understanding of NMB's role here, how you connect Dynamics to BluJay, and talk a little bit about the extra functionality that you bring in.
Oh, perfect. So first of all, I just want to add quickly to what Bob mentioned. I think what is very important in the project success is the communication between the partner and the customer, and between the partner ISV and the customer. This is a very important piece of information. And again, I just want to mention this again, over communicating is the best process here. Make sure all parties involved understand their roles, their functionality. Everyone knows what is the product capabilities are, and that will enhance the project for sure, and also bring more value to the customer. And in terms of like your question, Rick, what we bring to the table. First of all, we try to reside to use standard framework of Microsoft as much as possible. But again, there are gaps in the process, in the solution. That's why we are bringing BluJay into the mix. BluJay has vast knowledge of supply chain solutions, not only in parcel shipping, it's on multi-carrier, transportation, logistics, customs documentation, all those areas that fills those gaps, especially for like multinational companies, international shipping, multi-carrier platforms. That's why what we are doing is we are trying to bring this knowledge or best knowledge into Microsoft Word by creating user experience, user interfaces seamless in D365 or Microsoft Word. So the user does not know that there's a BluJay engine behind the scenes, but there's a very powerful engine running those functionalities. And we bring this to the user interface, and the user does not know. They don't need to go out of the system. They use the same system, one system. Everything is integrated, and it's ease of use. And we try to make those processes as efficient as possible to make the customers or packers' role easier and make those like process much faster.
So if there's changes in the BluJay system, changes in D365, NMB takes care of all that.
Yeah,
yes.
And Rick, I just want to add one thing in there for that. Then it enables us in D365 to be able to take advantage of some of the training tools, standard operating procedure tools that are then available. Again, now it's in that single platform. So now we can naturally use all that great tooling that Microsoft has provided to deliver that end-to-end user and then ultimately training experience as well as you scale out to, you know, potentially hundreds, maybe even thousands of users across the globe.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to chime in on what Jeremy is saying. Absolutely, Task Recorder is one of those tools I think that he's alluding to, in that, you know, we have one tool that can be used everywhere within the 365 ecosphere. And what that also means is that the trainer or the departments responsible for keeping everyone up to speed has one way of doing it. And it's exactly the same way no matter where you are within the 365 offering. So if I'm training somebody on, for example, creating a purchase order, and then I'm going over to talk to somebody about a packing station and how they operate within that, the look and feel of the training itself is exactly the same. It's a task recorder. And I don't think that should be underestimated, because training, and Jeremy, you can chime in on this, that's one of those problems that every single project will run into. How do we train initially? How do we keep them trained during the UAT? And then finally, when we deploy and new people come in, how do you train them up effectively and efficiently?
Yeah, and actually the bigger and more global you are, then you're dealing with multi-language, you know, and all that as well. And so having that single repository tool to leverage is just a huge advantage to keep it within Dynamics.
Yeah. And one last thing, sorry to keep interrupting, but because NMB and BluJay are part of that ecosphere where they're embedded in 365, that means to us, the vendors like Sunrise and Avanade and customers, is that we already know that Microsoft has vetted everything technically about the solution, the code base, their update processes, skill sets, all of that stuff has already been vetted by Microsoft. So when we go to a customer with a company like BluJay and NMB, we absolutely feel very comfortable in doing that because Microsoft has pre-vetted everything, and they have a series of things that they have to continue to meet over time. So we're very comfortable in recommending them. We can't be that comfortable when we're recommending somebody that's outside of that ecosphere.
So Tim, I'd like to ask you a question about BluJay specifically. Like, you know, a lot of companies have heard of BluJay, but a lot of them haven't. So talk a little bit about, you know, the depth of BluJay and, you know, why you're a premium solution.
Sure, Rick, thanks. So BluJay is a global company. We're listed obviously in the Gartner Magic Quadrant for transportation management. We're the leading independent transportation management system in the market. So we have roughly about 7,500 customers around the world. We're in supply chain, logistics, as we mentioned before, all modes of transportation, ocean, rail, parcel, truckload, less than truckload, and we're providing those solutions on a global basis. We've been around for, I don't know, probably 30 plus years. BluJay is the combination of two previous companies you may have heard of, Keywill being one and Lean Logistics being the other. So those two were brought together about 3 or 4 years ago, and the company was rebranded BluJay at that time. So that's kind of what we do. Again, all the modes of transportation, as well as what Bob was saying earlier, custom, compliance, denied party screening, anything that has to do with the movement of goods around the globe is what BluJay is focused on. And so in this whole relationship, that's where we focus our attention. So we are focused on providing the best technology solution. And we partner with NMB, who integrates that. Instead of going one at a time with D365 implementations, NMB integrates that globally once and for all with the Microsoft products. They maintain those integrations. They maintain that technical stack in the Microsoft world, so that we're always in compliance and current with all the Microsoft standards as well. And then they can provide to the partners like Avanade and Sunrise to the end customers. So
you know, last year in 2020, when supply chains went into shock with all the changes, I guess your customers were able to pivot much easier than somebody who relied on sort of one or two suppliers.
Yeah, absolutely. And the freight world got set on its ear last year, obviously during the whole COVID quarantine and that. And just to bring it up to date, we're sitting on the same problem right now with all the storms and everything going on in Texas and across the South. Transportation is being just turned upside down right now. Spot market rates are going through the roof. Carriers, are tight. They can't find capacity, that sort of thing. And so our systems help customers get through those tough times as they come and go, and they seem to always come and go. So there's always a new problem.
Okay, so let's, we've got the customer, they've looked at the solution and they look at BluJay and NMB and say, okay, this is the way we want to go. Let's talk a little bit about, the timeline. How long does it take to actually deploy this type of solution? Mehmet, can we start with you?
So we usually recommend like 3 or 4 months period just to be involved in the early phases. But again, we have some cases that we were successful to implement in 2 weeks. So which we were brought at the very late in the game, and the customer was going live. So we had to provide this very out-of-the-box functionality with minimal modifications, and we were able to go live in 2 weeks. But as a suggestion to everyone, it's better to have more time frame, because every customer needs are different and they might have different views. So it's better for the success of those projects to have at least like 4 months period to be sufficient.
Bob, would you like to add anything?
Oh, absolutely. I totally 100% agree with what Mehmet was saying. Earlier is better. And one of the things that we find in every single project is the availability of the customer is always going to be the great unknown. Even though people like Jeremy and I, we plan and we make schedules, and the PMs try their best to make the schedule be adhered to, the fact is things happen. Who would have thought COVID was happening? Who would have thought there was a snowstorm in Texas, right? So there's a lot of things that happen. So to Mehmet's point, keep the schedule going. Do not, I would say, do not underestimate the effort that's needed. Always put in a little extra time for it. And then if you're able to accelerate that during the project, fantastic. Kudos to everybody that's there, and you'll get the reward at the end. But if you're not able to do that, you put in the plan that you weren't expecting to be as efficient as you hoped you could, and therefore you'll still have an on-time delivery.
Great. Jeremy, would you like to add anything about deployments?
I just think that to second what Mehmet or third to what Mehmet and Bob were saying, it's ultimately planning and tying it to the specific processes that you're implementing at your customer. At Sunrise, we may have a little bit narrower view of the world because we're always in consumer goods, retailers, distribution, and sometimes those consumer goods companies manufacture. So we're always very vertically focused. We don't tend to hit some of the other like process manufacturing sort of customers and whatnot. So we really tie it to those specific processes. And thus, if you can imagine, just take the simple, I sell to other businesses, and I want to provide them that promise of the lowest rate possible. Well, if we go in and show the customer that first version that doesn't have, say, BluJay involved in it, then we're just going to have to show it to them again a second time and a third time until we get that right. And so thus, if you, again, have them early, then the less you have to show, and the quicker you can get to that design completeness to deliver that to that customer and that need. So it may be our own kind of point of view of the world about how we run projects when we get into it, but we want to, it's so critical usually that it's beyond obvious that we have to do it early, right out of scoping. So.
Okay, great. So, let's talk about customer success. We see that title around a lot. I'm a customer success manager. So how do we make sure our customers are successful when they choose BluJay and NMB working together? Why don't we start with the partners, and then I'll go to Mehmet, and then we'll let Tim finish up with the big BluJay story of customer success. So let's go over to you, Bob.
Yeah, customer success is one of those gray areas that everyone says is really important, but everyone has a different way of defining it. I think really what Jeremy and I are saying, and Mehmet is echoing, is plan for the worst. If you're able to get a little bit better traction or a little bit better success early on, if you find efficiencies where you thought there was going to be problems, then you're going to be successful. But I would say, again, it's communication up and down the chain. That's the most critical thing for the success of the project. When you hit a roadblock, immediately raise the flag. When you know, and one of the things that we find in a lot of projects is dependencies. And BluJay and NMB offer a very complex solution in a very nice, tight package. That doesn't mean that there's less dependencies on other processes. So for example, if you're using warehouse management, which used to be called advanced warehousing, you have a whole different look and feel that you got to take care of in your packing situation, in your shipping situation, in your staging situations, that you wouldn't have if you were using traditional inventory management. So those kinds of things, you know, you have to get those dependencies understood very quickly up front. And this is where a partner like NMB and BluJay come in, and people like Mehmet and his team, in that they know 365 backward, forward, upside down. So when I come in and tell them, we're running advanced warehousing here or warehouse management, it automatically clicks in their head, okay, I got this and this and this and this. I have to think about, bring that up as soon as we can to the project manager for his dependencies on all the team meetings and such and such. And with partners like that, you're pretty much guaranteed that you'll have a successful implementation.
Okay, great. Over to you, Jeremy. Let's talk a little bit about customer success.
Yeah, absolutely. So in that same way that Bob was describing it, what I would add on is the more specific that you can get into the definition of the customer and their requirements, then the more specific you can get in managing that communication with the customer. And so when you've got those three core pillars involved of the customer at the top, and then the partner, and then the add-on solutions like NMB and BluJay here, that communication is very important to be specific, as in, Mehmet, I need your help in this particular area, and we need to solve it by this particular date to keep our project on track and being successful. And so developing that almost your project dictionary of terms and processes that you're all going to be relying on each other becomes key from both the upfront planning and through the project management communication down. And we should all just work then together through any of those challenges that come up. You know, it could be that then we have a dependency on the e-commerce system to integrate in. And, you know, I guess what I'd like to highlight is maybe the difference, as Bob was saying, you may have that other partner in there, you know, and it could be a different e-commerce system, and they don't know anything about D365. And so they're just saying, hey, I'm going to pass you the order in this way, and you figure out the rest. Like, I captured the payment and you figure out the rest. And I guess our experience with BluJay and NMB has been opposite of that, because they have Dynamics expertise and they're embedded in it. It just makes that natural communication and that language communication across what the customer is expecting, what the partner consulting team is expecting, and then the ISV just becomes a natural fit. And so again, when you're specific in that way, then the customer knows and will have the right expectations about what we're going to go deploy, and are we managing it to deliver it in the timeline that we expected. And then last but not least, as you go into the post go live and the hypercare sort of management of it with the team, that all the issues that may arise as you launch, because right, no one ever has any issues when they launch an ERP, but that management of the issues become again just a much more collaborative effort, because we're all talking from the same book and the same set of processes. I think that sets us up very well for success with the customer and with our partners at BluJay.
Sometimes we have a pretty unique language over here at working with Microsoft and Dynamics. So you're completely right about having that experience being important. Thanks. Mehmet, let's talk a little bit from the NMB perspective. How do you guys measure customer success?
So for me, I mean, the less support calls we have better successful customer implementation. That's always good indicator for sure. But in terms of like shipping, it's a very important piece of information. When shipping stops, everything stops. So we need to make sure that when we provide international documents or hazmat documentation, so the carrier will be able to handle those shipments and then clear it or clear the customs. Everything should go smoothly, and we should not have any issues with when we do go live with the customer. And we have some customers which has like a couple of hundreds shipments per day to thousands, or even like a lot of shipments going through this the pipeline. And some of them are seasonal. During Christmas time, they want to have so millions of shipments going, and there's quite a bit of stress on the customer side as well. And if we can support these processes, if this process are efficient and they can also support their internal processes, I think it's a success for all of us.
Okay, great. So Tim, I'll let you finish this session talking, because I think BluJay's got the most moving parts in this scenario, right? So how does BluJay make sure their customers are successful? And you're on mute, Tim.
The dreaded mute button. Lament, while we're there, we have a go live coming up. So let's, I know it's going to be great. Everything's tracking well. So.
No pressure, right?
Yeah, that's right. It's recorded now.
It's recorded, yeah.
So Tim, let's talk about customer success at BluJay.
Sure. And like all of us on the call, Rick, we take customer success very seriously, obviously, to be in this business we're in. We look at transportation really, of course, it's what we do, right? But we look at it as the mission critical piece. You can have the greatest ERP and you can have the greatest warehouse system and you can have all these other, but if you can get the product off your shipping dock, the rest of it doesn't really matter. So we understand that we're very critical in this whole ecosystem here to the actual movement of goods. And so we take very seriously that task, and across our 7,500 customers or so, we realize that our job is to stay in compliance with all the carriers, with all the rules, the regulations, with the Customs and Border Patrol, with anything that might affect the technology that would slow these processes down in these sites where we're running for our joint customers. So we take it to heart. Our role is to really keep this technology current so that it functions, as our joint customers need it to do for them, to keep this a smooth process as possible. We do customer success a lot of different ways. We've got full support. We've got full, support teams and follow-up customer service teams and all that kind of thing. But our real job in this whole ecosystem is to make sure that the base technology is functioning as required and compliant with all the different, rules and regulations across the board.
Okay. Well, I want to thank everybody for their time today. It was a great presentation, and hopefully we can touch base soon and talk more about shipping and transportation. So thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks, Rick. Thanks for participating, and thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks
Take
a lot.
care.